This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Дейвид Айк, the English writer and public speaker known since the 1990s as a professional conspiracy theorist, calling yourself a full-time investigator into who and what is really controlling the world. You're the author of over 21 books and 10 DVDs and have lectured in over 25 countries, speaking live for up to 10 hours to huge audiences filling stadiums like Wembley Arena. You are here today to talk about the coronavirus pandemic, the worldwide COVID-19 lockdown, and the looming global economic recession. David, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks, Brian.
So first of all, just as far as my beliefs, I personally don't believe the coronavirus was created by a third party. I do think it occurred naturally. I do believe in the science, and I do believe in vaccines. I'm sure we're going to talk about this. I do plan on getting my flu vaccine and any future coronavirus vaccines, although you might talk me out of it. We'll see. I am now obeying the orders of the government. I'm complying with their requests for information and behavior. We're going to see what happens with that. That being said, I do believe at this point that the virus can no longer be controlled in the Western world. And as a healthy 40-something-year-old male, I'm prepared to get it right now, and I don't believe it's going to kill me. We just shook hands. Over the long term, I do think 70 to 80% of the population is going to get it and hopefully become immune to it. But also I understand, due to the safety of the elderly, and I know we're going to talk about that, and those with lower immune systems and respiratory problems, I understand and I agree with this policy of social distancing in order to flatten the curve and not to overwhelm our medical system. Finally, I just want to say I think we believe we now live in a post-coronavirus world where the virus is going to be along for a long period of time and it's going to change our behavior. Let me hit you with some stats and then we can jump into this. As of today, March 18th, there are 208,221 reported cases worldwide and 8,272 confirmed deaths. Federal Reserve has cut rates to nearly zero. The U.S. has approved a $1 trillion stimulus package. The U.K. a £330 billion stimulus package. Many industries at risk. Aerospace, travel companies, entertainment, events, retail outlets, the list goes on and on and on. I hear through my sources we should expect military troops here in London in the next couple days on the streets. David, there's an ancient Chinese expression that says, may you live in interesting times. Some say it's a curse. What do you see in the world? What are you concerned about? And do you feel for the British citizens and global citizens?
Right. Well, maybe if I just put some background in place, and then we can take it from there. For 30 years, I've been warning people in my books and in every other way I can that this world is controlled by a cult. It's a cult that has no borders. It operates in all the, at least major countries, and in fact, all the countries in the end, and particular in those countries that dictate the direction of the world. So the cult will be at the core of the system in China. It will be at the core of the system in America, etc., etc., etc. And so what have I said in this 30 years that this cult wants? I've said, and I've said it in the chats we've had before, it wants to create a beyond Orwellian global state in which a tiny few people dictate to everyone else. I've referred to this as the Hunger Games society. And you can picture the structure very clearly. Picture a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you've got a tiny few enormously wealthy people that actually are connected to this cult. We now have a name for them. We call them the 1%. At the bottom of this pyramid in the Hunger Games society is basically the rest of humanity that is dependent upon the 1%. And in between the two is a vicious, merciless police military state to impose the will of the 1% on the population and to prevent the population challenging the 1%. And this Hunger Games society is not classic fascism, it's not classic communism, although the outcome in terms of tyranny is the same. It is a technocracy. A technocracy is defined as a society that is controlled by bureaucrats, experts, scientists, engineers, technocrats. And the ability of that situation to happen is through smart technology and AI. The idea is that everything will be connected to AI. This is what the Internet of Things is all about. And if you listen to the crazies in Silicon Valley, they're telling you that in the period around 2030, a year that keeps coming up from all directions, we will have a situation where the human brain will start to be connected to AI. And thus, whoever controls AI will be connecting and driving the perceptions of humanity. And that can be done from a central point through this smart grid, global smart grid. So that's the structure that they want. They also want a society completely cashless, where everything is digital money, a single one world currency, which will be run through this smart grid. Now, in the same 30 years, I've been saying there are two major techniques that are being used to bring about that situation. One, I've called since the 1990s problem, reaction, solution, where you covertly create a problem, you use the unquestioning, pathetic mainstream media to tell the public the version of the problem you want them to believe. And you're looking at stage two, the reaction, for fear, that's the currency of control, outrage, whatever the problem is, and either a demand from the public that something must be done, or at least an acceptance from the public that things need to change because of the problem. And at that point, those who've created the problem got that reaction openly in changes in society, offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves covertly created. And those changes, step by step, take us further and further to that Hunger Games society. There's another version, which I call no problem reaction solution, where you don't need a real problem, you just need the perception of one, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and you society-changing solution. The stablemate of problem reaction solution is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, where you start at A and you know you're going to Z, but you know if you go in too big a leap, people will look up from the game show and the latest Simon Cowell and say, what's going on, because the change is so great. So you do it in as big a steps as you can towards your outcome, but not so fast or big that you alert too many people to the fact that it's a pattern. What you want people to believe is everything is random. And I have this other phrase which relates to all this: know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know where this world is being taken by this cult, then everything seems random. Coronavirus, random. Climate change, random. Economic crash, random. But when you know where we're being taken, you know the outcome, this Hunger Games structure society, now the apparently random events become clear stepping stones to that outcome. Now, let's take all of that and apply it to the coronavirus and what's happening now, and let people decide for themselves if they think that the fact that the coronavirus hysteria ticks every single box of that outcome, that goal, whether that's a coincidence. I absolutely do not believe that it is. And, you know, you mentioned that you don't think that it was a created virus. But the fact is, whether it was or whether it wasn't, doesn't matter to the fact that once you roll this out, it takes on a momentum of its own.
I agree with that.
And therefore, what is unfolding was desperately predictable. And in fact, we'll get into this as we chat, two massive 1% organizations, one in fact 6 weeks before this virus came to light in China, were playing out scenarios and simulations based on exactly this scenario that's unfolding now. And what they said would happen is exactly what is happening, down to the fine detail.
Okay, but the coronavirus is real and it is dangerous. You do believe that?
Well, not as a black and white, no.
Okay, but it is real?
Obviously, there is a strain of this coronavirus, because there are many coronaviruses, which appears to be different. But if you look in terms of the danger is to a certain section of society. Do you know, mainstream doctors, I watched an interview with one in America only 2 or 3 days ago, and they're saying, well, just to put into context, 80% of people that are diagnosed with coronavirus have, and this is his quote, very mild symptoms. The ones that are in danger, and by the way, in danger from any virus, including the classic flu, are those that have compromised immune systems. And they are old people, elderly people, and they are people with what is termed pre-existing health problems. Why? The pre-existing health problems are putting so much pressure on the immune system, it's already weak when it's hit with this. This is why someone like that will have potentially a serious situation, and someone with an immune system in working order of any level will just swat it away. And another point, you know, have we not learned yet to take what the authorities tell us with a pinch of salt until it's proved otherwise? Do you know, there was a lady called Dr. Deborah Blix. She's the White House coronavirus coordinator. She said in a press conference 2 days ago that 96% plus of those who have been tested for coronavirus in South Korea were negative. And she said, and our testing results in America show about the same. And so when you are in a massive way, you are diagnosing on the basis of symptoms. How the hell do you know they've got this coronavirus strain and not something else? Me and my son Gareth, well before Christmas, both went down with very, very rarely ill. That's why we remember it. We both went down with this illness, and now as I read the symptoms of this coronavirus strain, we had word for word, point by point, every single symptom. And that means one of two things. It means either this coronavirus strain was going around in Britain then, before it had even emerged out of China, or, far more likely, we got something else with exactly the same symptoms. So I would hold back on believing the figures. And I would also...
those figures I mentioned, are you unsure about those?
I question any figures coming out of mainstream authority. Okay. I've been investigating the mainstream everything for 30 years. And, you know, most of the time, if they ever told the truth, they would genetically implode from the shock. So I question everything. And if it stands up, it stands up. But I don't just take it because someone in a suit has told me to believe it. For instance, you know, in 2017, 2018, 45 million people got the flu in America, according to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention figures, 61,000 died. Where was the hysteria then? 61,000 people dying.
Well, they say that this is more dangerous and more contagious, and it's potentially going to kill more people. Because otherwise, that's a good question, David. Everyone's like, well, how come people aren't worried about this when the flu from 18 killed 50,000? This has only killed 8,000.
The point is, though, this is the point, that according to officialdom, 80% of people who get the coronavirus, diagnose the coronavirus, and not necessarily all got it, have very mild symptoms. The vast majority of the rest have what they call moderate symptoms, and that leaves some with compromised and weakened immune systems who get the serious end of it. And they get the serious end of the flu as well, and other viruses.
And these people are clogging up the Italian health system right now. Do you believe that's true?
The point is that what we surely should be doing is focusing on those people and doing what is necessary to protect them and their immune systems from the consequences. But to have the vast majority of the population who at most will have mild story. One of the first the virus was interviewed on a BBC local radio station, and he said, well, I had a bit of a mild fever. Well, what's that? That's the immune system using heat to kill the predator. Just perfectly immune system response. So anyway, he says, and so I got checked out, and they said I got coronavirus, and they said you've got to go to hospital. He said, but I felt all right. I had a bit, I had a few aches and stuff, but I feel all right. He says, so I'll go to hospital. He said, but by the time I get to hospital, he said the symptoms are gone, and he's gone down as a statistic, coronavirus in the numbers. So when you've got people who are getting that even if they do get it on a vast scale. In terms of percentage who have that response, you get an even greater number who don't get it, and for that you destroy, because that's what's happening before our eyes, Brian, you destroy the world economic system. Now let's go back to how I started. One of the things I've been pointing out as a problem reaction solution that was coming to transform human society, including, by the way, one of the things I said was coming in my earlier books was a pandemic, because of all the boxes it ticks. But what I have been saying for the best part of 30 years is they are planning an enormous economic crash, and I've been saying it even more since 2008. Because 2008 seemed to be a nightmare. The point I'm making is what they want is something that would make 2008 look like, a Sunday school tea party. And so this coronavirus hysteria gives the excuse to do what they're doing. And the outcome and the consequences of what they're doing is to dismantle the world economic system. Now, another thing I've been saying, this Hunger Games society, I've been saying this for a long time, is designed to have no small business, no even medium-sized business, globally, just gigantic corporations that control and produce everything. Amazon is a classic example of what I'm talking about. What this coronavirus hysteria is creating is a situation unfolding by the hour worldwide that is destroying small business, family business, even medium-sized business, some even relatively big businesses too. It's destroying them. The big legacy of what is happening now will not be to do with health long term, it will be economic.
I agree with you.
It's going to be catastrophic. Now here's the point. What happens to those people whose businesses collapse? What happens to all those people who were working for those businesses? For bars, for hotels, for all these businesses that have been targeted. Don't go there, shut down. What happens to them? They fall into the bottom of the Hunger Games society. And what we're seeing now, every day, is this Hunger Games society coming closer and closer and closer because of what's being done in the name of protecting the people. I got news for you. You go deep enough into this system, they don't give a shit about the people. We are being asked to believe now that this system cares about old people. We must protect the old people. We must destroy the world economy to protect the old people. Oh, these would be the old people, would they, that have paid in their entire life through taxation and other means, and at the end, in their final years, they get handed a pittance of a pension which gives them the choice between being warm or being hungry. And what does that do? When people are going without essential things because the system doesn't care, and they're having to buy shite food because that's all they can afford. They can't have nutrients to boost their immune systems because they can't afford them, and the mainstream everything's not telling them they need them anyway. And at the same time, they're breathing in shit air, drinking toxic water and other drinks, being deluged with sugar, which has a phenomenally destructive impact on the immune system. All this is going on. We're living in an electromagnetic, technologically generated soup of radiation toxicity. And this system has allowed that to happen, has allowed corporations to do that, and now, having done all that, that's devastated the lives and the immune systems of old people, we are being asked to believe that the system cares about the health of the elderly. It doesn't give a shit. And I'm not talking about the nurses. I'm not talking about the doctors. I'm talking about that at the core which is driving this. And the idea that all these things are being done to protect the elderly, they don't give a shit about the elderly. The elderly are an excuse to impose the very society that I'm talking about. Now, if you look at when these things happen and great Orwellian, draconian things are put in place, oh, we've got to do this because of the problem. Well, the problem eventually passes. This virus will eventually flatten out. But what you see every time, 9/11's a classic, they'll roll back some of it, but not nearly roll back to where it was before. The whole thing's moved on, closer to the Hunger Games society.